Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome again to the second show of, well, in 2 days. So episode 22, Azure Community Live. And today we have a new guest from the community, Vukašin Terzić. Well, can you tell me a bit about yourself? Because we were chatting before the talk and you were telling me you're still traveling. I was like, okay, during COVID, how does that work?
Right. So thanks for having me here, guys. So my name is Vukašin Terzić. I work as a cloud solution architect for a company that is based in Prague, Czech Republic. But for some time now, quite a long time, my family and I travel around, and because I can work remotely, we don't have to stay in Czech Republic, and we can just move around and explore the world. And so what we did when the COVID situation started, we went back obviously to Prague. We were in a lockdown, keeping everything safe. And then when the situation got better, we decided, or as a family, that we can still travel, and when we found a safe place to go to, and we just moved. And so of course on the airport and everything, it was a little bit uncomfortable because there's so many people there. But once we came here, and we are now in Greece, everything was okay, and we were still keeping the distance and everything, but instead of being locked in a, let's say, apartment in a city, we were locked in a beach villa across of the ocean, or the sea.
Yeah, nice.
So that was the
Jealous
difference.
of what you were doing. I do have small kids of myself who have to go to school, so it's not really possible anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, so thanks for being on the show.
Thanks
We're going
for
to talk
having me.
about Azure Resource Graph. I'm really curious what you're going to tell us. So let's get straight to the content. And thanks everyone for watching. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all the new episodes. Like this episode if you like Vukašin's talk. And let's just go to the content. Enjoy and good luck.
Perfect. I do not have any slides today. So basically my second slide is that we are switching over to demo. And I hope you are all excited as much as I am today, because this is one of the very important topics. So let me go switch over here to Azure Portal. Oh, I'm sorry, just going to change that. One of the main issues that we find our clients are experiencing, and that you will find in almost any ungoverned Azure environment, is the lack of knowledge of what they actually have in their Azure environment. With the speed of how quickly you can create resources in Azure, and with so many different resource types in Azure, admins can easily lose the track of what they have there and what they're paying for. And of course, that can have like a huge impact on cost, on manageability of their environment, security definitely, and so on. And of course, when the bill comes at the end of the month, someone will ask you to like investigate and find out what you have there, and if there is something that you might not need to pay for, right? And so you can do that manually and go and use a search and open every resource group and try to figure it out. But using Azure Resource Graph Explorer, the tool that we're going to talk about today, allows us to discover and report on our Azure resources. We can perform efficient resource exploration at scale across multiple subscriptions. And that's something that you cannot do easily. And you don't need to install anything, no agent, no I don't know, modules or something like that. And you can easily perform a very complex and efficient search and get the results you want. And so you see that you now have a great tool at your hands that you can use to get all of those things. That's very useful to keep track of the resources, of course, to get a better overview of what you have and what you pay for. And also sometimes you need to find something. And you can use like search, but with the Azure Resource Graph, you can perform a search based on a specific property, not just on a name or by location. And I have one example of this, like what recently happened to me. We find out that Google search revealed publicly accessible endpoint on storage account of one of our customers. And I don't know if you know that, but I can do that right here. If you search for site blobcorewindows.net, you can find a bunch of things that are publicly available, and all of those are storage accounts in Azure with the publicly accessible endpoint. And so we find out that one of our customers has that publicly available, and which shouldn't be the case. And so for me to find that exact endpoint would be really difficult doing just a normal search. And with Azure Resource Graph Explorer, I did that in a second. Another great use case of it is that it can help you predict what resources will be affected by Azure policy. And I'm sure like most of you are using Azure policies, and sometimes if you have, for example, like the modify policy, it's really, really important to understand well what will be affected, which resources will be modified, or even like things will be blocked or so on. So using Azure Resource Graph Explorer can help you with that. And like what happened usually in the beginning, there is a confusion. So there is a tool called Resource Explorer that looks like this and allows you to go through your subscriptions, individual resources, and find the JSON configuration for that resource. Then there is also a similar tool called, just to remember, it's resources.azure.com, which is very similar to the Azure Resource Explorer, but here you can also switch to write and also change the configuration directly from here. And those are like really useful tools. You can execute like REST API from here and so on, but obviously they're not for purpose of documenting your environment. And the Azure Resource Manager, the tool that we want to talk about today, Azure Resource Graph, Azure Resource Graph. How that tool stays current, I think that's important to understand in the beginning. Basically, Azure Resource Manager, ARM, the thing you see in front of you, runs indexing in the back all the time and informs Resource Graph every time change is made. So Azure Resource Graph has this information immediately and saves it in databases, and it's always current. And why is that important? Because Azure Resource Graph is actually used by Azure Search. So if you go and search for something here, what you get is it's using a Azure Resource Graph in the background. And also another thing is that I found really useful and people usually don't know about it is the all resources tab. So this is the place where you can see all of your resources in your subscription. Seems pretty obvious, but what you can do is that you can apply some filters here, and also you can switch here to the different view. And this, what you see in front of you, is actually a beauty of the Azure Resource Graph, which allows us to work with the data in this way. Here I have a map by location, by resource group. You can see there are different ways of like showing things and listing things. And of course, this is a nice place to go and get a quick overview of things you have and things you are using the most. But with the Resource Graph Explorer, you are actually able to make those things custom and very, very specific to what you are looking for. And so you can see that there is a connection between Azure, deeper integration between Azure Resource Graph Explorer and Azure Resource Manager. And that is because Azure Resource Graph is using Azure Resource Manager API. Let me repeat that one more time. It's integrated directly with Azure Resource Manager API. And that's a huge thing in terms of speed and operability. You get the direct access to the level where other tools are not allowed to. So if you are using things like Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI, they don't have that kind of access. They work with SDKs, but they cannot go directly and use the API of the Azure Resource Manager. And I don't know, you probably tried listing like resources with PowerShell, with Azure PowerShell, where you have like hundreds of VMs and you want to list all of their properties and so on. And we all did that. I did that. I'm still doing that. But the main problem with that is the speed. It's actually really slow. We can probably run some command here to test it with measure. But the results you get with the Azure Resource Graph, they're actually, you get the results instantly. And I really like that about it. So let's take a look at this tool that I'm talking about. So this is where you find it. Azure Resource Graph Explorer. And what you will find first when you start using it, or when you open it, is is that you have to type some sort of code, right? You have this cursor here, and what happens to most of the users is they come to this page, they see this, and they figure out that they need to learn some new language, and then they don't even try it. They close the screen and they never come back. And and I'm sure like the more less experienced users who are not used to like type anything or do the scripting, this is definitely where they end. And so my goal for today is not going to teach you this query language that we will be using here, because we cannot do that in 1 hour, but to teach you how to use this entire interface and how to become familiar with it by using code examples, and to show you how to figure out your first queries so you are not afraid to experiment and start using it. And
it would be a good thing for Microsoft to just open a default query here, right? Like list all resources or something. Would be a good introduction.
That definitely, but what they did is they listed it here. So you have a lot of basic queries that you can start using immediately, which I will come back to that in a second. But yeah, you're right that if there is something there already written that they can run immediately, it will be probably easier and less frightening for the users. But I've seen this even between my colleagues who are the IT consultants and people who like work with Azure almost every day, but they just didn't want to try to learn new like query language. So let's go over this, and so you guys can start actually using it without need to learn, and then slowly when you find out how useful it is, then maybe you will actually start to like it and experiment with some editing existing queries. And that's how I started, and I picked it up really pretty quickly. So so first thing is that it's based on this query language we talk about here. It's based on Kusta query language. That's written with K. Funny thing about that is that the name, and I didn't know that, I just learned that recently. The name comes from Jacques Cousteau, the French ocean explorer and photographer. And so we have a query language here that is called like this. And it's so important thing, it's a read-only request. So it's a read-only language, and it's asking for something and returning the result. Result is a plain text. Syntax of writing things is meant to be like easy to read and understand. So maybe it's not that easy to write at first, but I'm sure that if you see the query, even if you see it for the first time, most of you will be able to understand what that comes and what that brings to you. If you used to work with log analytics before, this is very similar. It's the same syntax, just that there is a difference. The data here used by Resource Graph Explorer are saved in the databases, and you have to make your codes like the query to write the query in a way that it will read from the right database. That's the only difference. So so why do I don't see that? So let's go get that again. So you get here, this is your interface. Here on the left, you see those databases. And when you start exploring them, you will see that they're full of virtual tables. We will be looking in the resources database today, but you can see that you can also look into your, let's say, subscriptions, which are called resource containers, subscriptions, resource group. You can look at the security, you can look into events and so on. Each of those databases contains this huge list of virtual tables that correspond to all the resource providers. And they're here, whether you are using them or not, they're going to be here. Using the interface itself, it's very simple. The code actually builds as you click. Also, it supports the IntelliSense to finish up your things you're writing. It's a multi-query interface, so you can see that I have a query here. I can create a new one, and you see I can switch between them. Another thing that is specific here is that you can save and save as. So let's see. Let's write something. Resources. This is our first query. So, right. So what this does is that list or give me the count of all resources I have in my subscription. It took me 2 seconds to write it. Without this, I actually don't know how I would figure it out, that number. It will be very difficult. Maybe in all resources, but again, that's the Resource Explorer. So I get here that I have 58. And now what I can do is I can save or save as this query. So let's try to save it. I have to give it a name, a description, and then I have to decide, is it going to be private query or is going to be shared? The difference is that the private one is available only to me. If I want to select a shared one, then I can save it inside of a resource group, and it will be saved there as a resource, and it will be available for everyone who has like at least read access to that resource group. So that will be that's the difference between them. And then when you have a query that is saved, you can open it. You can see here that in private one, I have just one. If I go and say shared, I of course have to select, even through and find all of them, but I can select a specific resource group if I want to. And then I can open a set query, which will show in here. Right. So this is just another very simple example. What this does is that gives me all the resources where type is virtual machine. And of course, I had to get this from digging into here. And then I summarize by count. And I put out the OS type. So if I run that, I get here that I have 5 Windows and 2 Linux virtual machines. This can be very, very useful. So what else do we have here in our interface? Right, so that was all opening, running, save, and save as. Then in here, we get the results. Sometimes the results can be on multiple pages, so we can go here and use the left and right. There is thunderstorm outside. You can see also here that it took 0.2 seconds to return the result, to list all the resources where type is all the virtual machines, and find out their OS type. Doing that with PowerShell will definitely take you more lines of code, and it will be slower. And I'm PowerShell, so I'm not against it. I'm just saying that this is a tool that is specifically built for this, and it's really fast. You can also download the CSV, which is great. Maybe not in this case, but if you list like resources by name or something like that, you can download it here by CSV. Come back to this button in a bit. What you can also do is to show it in some kind of chart. So map will obviously not work here, but what we can use is this kind of chart and get it to show us details more graphically. Maybe this is not the most interesting example, but it is definitely something that works very well when presenting to like management, when presenting to like maybe even like finance and so on, where you want to show some things in this way and not just in a plain text. So this is something that is really, really useful. You have 2 types. Then what else you can do with it is that you can pin to dashboard. So let's open a dashboard here. So I'm going to open this one. It's a completely empty dashboard. And what I'm going to do is just to go and say, I like this one more, pin to dashboard. Is it private? Is it shared? I'm going to say private. And you can create a new one from here. And I just pinned it. And what happened now is that I can see that on my on my dashboard, which I can't. Let's see like this. Right. And this is great. You can edit this, obviously. You can change the name, you can change location, you can change the entire look of your dashboard, like by editing it and making things smaller and bigger. But this is great because this actually runs a query that gives you back the information. And so, of course, this is something that is useful to see the difference between them. But if you are like an IT person, you would like to get some different things, like maybe a location, maybe, I don't know, like public IP addresses. I always like to get there just to make sure that that I don't have any that are not, this should be there, so on. So let's try it. Let's try some of that. I'm going to open my another saved query. Get VM count. Okay, that's not going to be really interesting. I have 7 VMs. Let's pin that to dashboard. What else we can do? So let's type out something here. So right. Let's see if I got that right. Yes, I did. Those are my public IPs. What I want to do is to summarize count by, actually no, because that's just going to give me one number. Okay, so I want to use this. I can also go and say display some specific fields of this, which might be very useful. For now, we are not going to do that. So let's just pin that to dashboard. What else would you like to get? So let's say resources. And what do we want to project? Let's say location. Total. I'm just typing this as we speak. I didn't prepare this actually. Right, so I got the list here of the resources which we have in which region, which location. That looks good to me. I want to do it in a way of this chart, so I can have that graphically. Let's pin that to dashboard. Right, and I can do this, of course, for all the different types of resources we have. I can go on and on and on and start building something like this. Right, and what that gives me basically the overview of what I have. Maybe if I also want to work with some kind of events, I can also summarize those events here. I can put them in front of me, and every time I open my Azure, the default page will be Azure Dashboard, and I can go and see if something's wrong, if something is over quota, if I don't have enough space, and so on and so on. Or even the things like if someone created a new resource group with the wrong name or so on. So this is how you start building a little dashboard slowly. However, what Microsoft did, and as an example, they made a dashboard that is completed. It's called inventory dashboard, and it looks like this. So this is you can see without any work. I only downloaded this from a GitHub and uploaded, and now I have a complete dashboard that someone built for me, and it's completely based on the Azure Resource Graph. What I want to show here is that there was a throttle limit, and that is because with the Azure Resource Graph, you can only run 15 queries in 5 seconds. So this will, of course, auto-refresh. I can even refresh it manually because obviously we have more than 15 queries here in this dashboard to show everything. You see, I can go and refresh one by one, or I can refresh the whole thing. You see, very useful. If I am an administrator and I'm interested in some things, I would definitely like to go and have something like this as my first page, so I can have overview of my environment. And
does Azure have something smart to refresh that for you? Because you said you can only do 15 queries at once. This one has like 30 queries on them.
Yeah, it automatically refreshed you so that the rest of it got, without me going manually, it refreshed automatically.
And then it will spread the refreshes continuously as well. So it doesn't refresh all the graphs at the same time? Or do you have to configure that yourself?
Well, that depends like on the dashboard. Like there is no auto refresh. You cannot like keep this thing and have it auto refresh all the time for you. What actually happened here is just because here it was throttled and you run out of the tries, it's going to auto refresh it automatically. But this whole dashboard is not going to get automatically refresh and like entire thing.
Yeah. Okay, because that's what I often do in other Azure dashboards. You want to keep them up to date, so they keep refreshing themselves. But that's not possible for this then.
Well, this is like a normal Azure dashboard that you can configure as you would. So you can continue from here. This is like the normal standard Azure dashboard. Just those individual tables are queries that are actually based on the Azure Graph Explorer, and that itself, you see now it's refreshed for the rest of it.
Yep. Okay.
And it has a specific limit for itself, but of course there are other like limits for querying some resource and so on that will be applied separately if you reach them. Right. So so this gives you a dashboard, and I will have a link for this in the end. There are actually two sample dashboards. One is like this with nice titles, and the other one is like more simple. You can download both of them. Downloading from GitHub will actually download the JSON file, and then you just go here, new dashboard, upload, and you upload the JSON file, and it will create this entire thing for you. Great thing about this in particular is that you can always go, and you don't have to actually save this. I go back here. I didn't have to save it and have it somewhere saved in order to pin it to dashboard. This query itself lives in the dashboard. So if I want to change this, I don't have to go somewhere here, find the one I saved and edit that one. No, I can edit directly this one from here, and I can actually edit what this query does and how it displays it. So that's one thing that I really like about it.
Yeah, your connection is breaking up a bit.
That's our dashboards, and let's now go back.
Yeah, your connection is becoming a bit worse. I think because of the weather, maybe the thunderstorms that you're in now. But you're still okay to hear. I will interrupt when you're not, when I can't understand you anymore. But the video is a bit blurry maybe for you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. I apologize. Really, there is a thunderstorm outside. The first rain, actually, for the 3 months I'm here. This is the first rain. It started to rain last night. Still like 30 degrees Celsius, so still summer here. Right. So let's go back to this Custo query language. So you go back here. You are now in this default, and of course you get afraid, like, what am I going to do, right? How am I going to learn this? So there is a website on a docs page where you can find all the different examples. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to go that far. Where you can find all the examples. Examples are here as well. So you can directly go here and find some very, very interesting and useful queries
I'm still on the
already
same
written for you and available for you. Still on the
screen is sharing
page.
I still Resource Graph Explorer with the 3 bars, because that's what we're seeing.
Okay. Well, no, I'm now on the page where their examples are. All right, so I'm going to click open one of the examples.
Could you stop sharing and reshare again?
Sure, can do that.
Yeah, now it shows. Now it shows your desktop. Like gray and all the colors. Yeah, now it's there with all the examples.
Okay. Yeah, getting there. Right. So how I got this? I went here and basically when you run something, you will go here to results, but you can always go back to get started and found a bunch of queries here. One of them is the one I just clicked. It's called find all public IP addresses. And obviously it's going to limit this to 100, but I don't have 100 of them, so that should be fine. And I can run the query and I can get all my public IP addresses. This is a test subscription, so it's fine, I can show them. And this is something that can be like entire solution for you, because you might not need anything special. Maybe you are not even interested in getting some info that is like specific to you. In that case, you can just go ahead and try to using those. This will also give you a great example of the how everything is written, of the syntax. And maybe you will not be interested here in a property IP address, but you will look into different properties and maybe you will just write them here instead. And that's it. You wrote you edited your first query. And then there are more advanced ones. Those are usually require a little bit more. So let's go open here. Things that are not really obvious how it works, but when you run it, the results should be pretty straightforward and useful to you. Right. So don't be afraid, don't get scared because of you see some new query language here. And as I said, very important note, this is a read-only language. You can not destroy anything because you are actually reading things only and getting the results. And you're not trying to, like, I don't know, change something or destroy your environment. Okay. One more query that I'm going to just type here or use as an example is this one. And now you can see here is where it gets a little bit more complex, but it's not even that complex. It's just using multiple queries one after another to show you multiple things. And it took 0.8 seconds, and I got all my VMs, their size, their network ID, their public IP, and so on. So very, very useful tool to list and work with your environment. Right. So, of course, I guess some of you, or maybe even most of you, will already be using PowerShell or Azure CLI, and that's okay. You can actually incorporate those results and use them with your existing PowerShell scripts. The difference is that you don't have to write like a PowerShell script. You can just, in your PowerShell, use special commandlet to get this and then use it as an object and work with it. One thing I didn't mention actually, and that's really important, is that the Resource Graph Explorer works only where you have access. So basically, it depends on the airbag, how they are configured. If you run something on entire subscription and you only have access to one resource group, you are only going to get one resources that are in that specific resource group. So it's really, it happened to me a few times. I sent a client a code and they run it and they said I didn't get any results. And the problem was always because that account under which they were trying to run it didn't have the read access to the rest of the environment where it needed to read it. So that's the important thing. And now let's look how you can use it with PowerShell. So first thing, you need to install a module. And that module is not actually part of the, it's not part of the AZ module. It has to be installed separately. And what am I going to do? I'm going to install it here in the Azure Cloud Shell, because I don't want to be logging in and slowing down all the things. And this will work exactly the same in your normal Azure environment. The only difference is that you will have to log into your Azure from your PowerShell. Right. So the module is called az.resourcegraph. So if I go say get module name is available, should be there. Maybe this is going to be too much. Right, it's not Azure. Okay. So install module name AZ Resource Graph. It's going to install the module, and that's going to go pretty quickly. And then you will actually get only one command. Right. So it's not a bunch of new commandlets that you need to use. It's basically just one command that is going to allow you to run your query, your existing query within the PowerShell. So if I now go get command module AZ Resource Graph, it's just one. It's called search AZ Graph. And how that works is open here an easy query, one of those that I actually did before. Right. The only thing you have to do is to put everything in one line. So that's the only difference or only change that you have to do in your code. So I'm going to use this command search AZ graph, and it's going to be, let me actually show you what else you have. You don't have anything else. And it's going to be resources where, sorry, a little bit graphic issue here. Let's clear that screen. Now it's a little better. Oops. I've prepared that so I don't have to type it. Basically, I can do that like this. You put everything in one line and then just copy that and put it here. And you got the result. And the result is exactly the same as if I run that query here. So you can see that I got exactly the same result. And of course, inside of PowerShell, I could save this in a, I could have saved this in an object, and then I could work with that and find out and do rest of my code. So pretty easy. The only one commandlet, search AZ graph. If you go to Azure CLI, there is basically very similar thing. Just in Azure CLI, you don't use modules, you have to install the extension, and the extension is called Resource Graph. So first thing you would do is that you would install extension, and then basically you just have one commandlet inside of that extension, and the usage is exactly the same. I love using this for most of my scripts where I actually have to list some things and download some data, get like query something against Azure. I try to use my existing queries that I have here in the resource graph and just use that from my PowerShell and get information and then work with it. It's much easier than writing all those different things inside of PowerShell. So that's it for my demo. I hope I covered everything, and I really hope that I achieved actually so that you will go and look into it, try running those sample queries, try executing them, maybe even try creating your own dashboards with it, because it is really useful tool, and I cannot imagine Azure governance or governing like that environment without having this and without using this on a daily basis.
Yes, thanks for your talk, Vukašin. I think Azure Resource Graph is really a powerful tool that's often overlooked. I often use it to just query some stuff that would be such a hassle to find in the portal, to get like how many VMs do we have, or how many of these resources do we have as an enterprise, or something like that.
Right.
That's just really hard to do. And often people are like, oh, I need to write a script to get these things. Like, or you could just check Azure Resource Graph and then just do a simple query. There's so many people don't know about these features. So it's good to have people sharing this knowledge on these meetups like this. So thank you very much. Enjoy your summer still in Greece.
Thank you.
Hopefully the situation in Greece will be okay still. Well, once more, thanks for doing the talk. Everyone who's currently watching, thanks for watching. If you're watching the recording, try to be on the live episode next time, because then you can actually ask questions.
Exactly.
Next week, we will be back. A session on data center migration. So that. Thanks, everyone, and have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.